Good evening. Welcome to the City of Opa-locka virtual special commission meeting. We're here to continue a discussion over our budget and approve our preliminary budget. Madam Attorney, could you state the emergency protocols that govern this meeting?
Sure. Pursuant to Executive Order number 20-69, issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March 20th, 2020, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location, and utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.545(b)(2) of the Florida statutes. The members of the City Commission appearing remotely for this meeting are Vice Mayor Davis, Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Burke, Commissioner Kelly, and Mayor Paget. An opportunity was given to the public to email the city clerk prior to this commission meeting, and the city clerk will state for the record at the appropriate time whether there have been any questions, comments, or concerns on any of the items you will hear in this evening's meeting agenda. This meeting is being streamed live at www.youtube.com/user/City of Opa-locka.
Right. Thank you very much, Madam Attorney. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a comment really quick?
Yes.
So there was an amended version of the agenda that went out, and I see that you don't have that amended version in front of you.
All right.
So the link was sent out today, this morning, and the amended notice went out yesterday.
All right. Thank you very much. You can proceed with the roll call.
Commissioner Bass?
I'm here.
Commissioner Burke? Commissioner Vice Mayor Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Present.
Mayor Paget?
I'm present. All right, thank you. Commissioner Kelly, could you lead us in invocation?
Our Father and our God, we thank you for this day. We thank you, God, for all of your continued blessings. Continue to watch over this city, watch over our nation, watch over those who are impacted by COVID-19. Continue, God, to unite us together. Where there's unity, there is strength. In your name we do pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Hold on, let me get this together. Madam, Mr. Manager, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right. Madam Clerk, could you go through the protocols that govern our public comment and state if we have any public input on this special commission meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So the public had an opportunity to submit their comments for today's virtual special commission meeting up until 3:30 p.m. via email at publiccomments@opalockafl.gov or by calling 786-618-2636 and leaving a pre-recorded message. There are no public comments for this meeting, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to continue to encourage the public to please utilize the public comments at fl.gov or public comments at opalockafl.gov so that you and your voice are heard at every single commission meeting. Please make sure you join in this conversation. I know during this virtual time, it is unfortunate that we cannot have meetings in person, but we have to do what we have to do. So please continue to step up and make sure that your voices are heard. With that, Madam Attorney, we move on to our first resolution.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, setting the proposed budget for the City of Opa-locka, Florida, as required by the state and local agreement of cooperation between the governor and the City of Opa-locka for fiscal year 2020 through 2021, establishing requirements for the approval of the city budget on or before August 1st, and forwarding to the governor the proposed annual budget of the city as preliminarily approved by the City Commission for FY 2020 through 2021, and directing the city manager to forward a copy of this resolution and approved proposed budget to the governor, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for an effective date. This is sponsored by the city manager.
All right, do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Vice Mayor Davis,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bass. The floor is open for discussion. Mr. Manager, since this is your sponsored item, you want to introduce the conversation? Unmute your mic, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commission, staff, and residents that are watching. I am going to defer this presentation to the budget administrator. Is regarding the budget. And next item is involving trim. So I'm going to let him introduce and provide a presentation to the commission. Mr. Anathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, staff, good evening. Bob Anathan, Budget Administrator. It's budget time again. It's going to be like Groundhog Day. There have been some changes over the last 36 hours. The good news is that it's all good news. As you'll see, we're going to go through it very quickly. I think you're going to find this is probably one of the less stressful budget meetings you've ever participated in, but we'll get started. The agenda starts with talking about the millage rate adoption. We're going to pass that up because that has to do with the second resolution. Next item is going to be what I called good news. As you will see, it is. We have several budget issues to discuss. The wage policy issue that was discussed before that would bring everybody up to a minimum of at least $30,000 in wages. As per the guidance that was provided, I think probably about a week ago at this point, we've come back with certain options to boost the Parks and Recreation program over what it might have otherwise been. It was introduced the other night that there is a need for an asset identification program to support the audits the city's going through. So that's going to be brought in tonight. And also, even more recently, there was it became apparent that something needed to be done in regard to the budget that was in place for the public information marketing program for next year. And I'll get to that in a moment. The last item I want to take you through very briefly is there is an updated CRA budget. I want to make you aware of it. It has not been approved by the CRA board at this point. My recommendation is going to be to leave the old budget in place, but you need to be aware of this one for discussion purposes. We may want to send this to the state as just in a memo to explain that the budget that's in the budget book, in fact, may well be amended by the time we get to September. After that, we'll go into a discussion. I have no plans at this point to go through everything we went through before, but I stand ready to answer any questions about what we're going to talk about tonight or anything that's been covered in the prior meetings. And after that, it will be the budget adoption itself. I'm going to go through the next couple pages very quickly because I have to do, well, let me do one thing first. In terms of where we are, we're now July 28th. We've got half of it behind us and we've got a fair amount to go. We've got to get whatever's done tonight has got to be repackaged and gotten to the state by the 1st of August. And we also have to make sure the trim notice stuff is in the system by the 4th of August. I'm not going to address this now. We can address it at the second resolution, which has to do with, again, adopting the millage rate. To get off into the FY21 budget very quickly, this is the citywide financial summary, just not because we're going to spend any time on it, just to kind of reset you a little bit. Again, for FY20, we think that there will be a surplus going into fund balance. And when we talk about fund balance, it's not on this page, it's not only general fund, but it's other fund balance as well.
Mr. Anathan?
Yes, sir.
Are you reading from a slide that we should be following with?
I do apologize. I'm having a great show here. I'll have to get you to, I do apologize for that. I thought I had done that. Okay, so we're going to do that. I do apologize. And I will do a reset. My bad. Okay.
Continue.
Yes, sir. And I think we're almost there. And let me just do a very quick reset in terms of what I was looking at, which you didn't get to see. Okay. Okay, again, calendar 28th is where we're at the moment. Middle meeting, several to go. Not going to spend any time on the millage rate for the moment because that has to do with the second resolution, so we'll power right through that. Get into the FY21 budget, which hopefully everybody can now see. And again, just to reset you from where we were, have no intention of really getting this in any way, shape, or detail at this point. They'll certainly stand ready to answer questions later on. For this year, citywide, we're looking at a conservative addition to fund balance across all funds. That's much more than general fund of 3.6 million. For next year, we see a decline in the revenue, 2.4 million is indicated right there. Also, reduction in transfers in because we got a real boost this year from the bank releasing the 5.2 million. Unfortunately, can't be repeated next year. You can see on the expenditure side, the primary increase is going to be in capital expenditure, and that's first and foremost on the enterprise side. Total increase in expenditures for next year proposed at this point over this year, 5.6 million. And we do indicate the usage of $2.7 million of fund balance. That's approximately 2 million, 1.9 million in the stormwater fund, and another 800,000 in the People's Transportation Plan. And again, this is just for trying to level set. We're primarily concerned about the general fund, and I won't, well, let me make a couple points here. The general fund, as we've talked about a couple times, anticipates showing a surplus this year of at least 2.6 million, barring a hurricane or something awful like that. Transfers in next year, analogous to what we just talked about a moment ago, you can see here the reduction, which is due to the fact that we do not get another boost from the bank in terms of release another 5.2 million.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes, sir.
Are you going over the same presentation we went through last week? Because I know this conversation was specifically about the reason why we approved the budget, but we rescinded and deferred it due to the discussion about what to do with funding as opposed to parks improvements, this asset inventory, and also the living wage. So I think those are the specific things you were addressing. Is this a setup for that, or what's going on?
This is just a preamble, just to remind you where we were before we get into those exact topics. They're about two pages down. We'll get to them momentarily.
Okay.
I'll pass this one for the moment. I had mentioned before that there was new news.
Yes, Commissioner Kelly.
I'm along the same line. Where is he reading from? Because I'm trying to follow where he's even at.
So right now you should be able to look on. You should be able to see on his screen. On the screen,
Right.
he has slides that he's going through right now.
So we don't have an amended document that was sent to us?
The
Mr.
document that was sent to you has been updated by a couple of events that have occurred in the last 36 hours. So, you know, it's a very dynamic environment. I'll explain why. In fact, this page will, I think, share that with you. By way of, I had mentioned in prior presentations that we really were uncertain about the revenue. And one of the ingredients that we were uncertain about was the fact that the state normally provides information at the end of June on a couple of key categories of revenue. They did not do that this year. And in fact, they didn't do it until one piece of information was received yesterday and one piece of information was received about half an hour ago. The good news on this, as I said, it is a good news chart, is that in the absence of state input, I had been very conservative, particularly on the sales tax number. The state is much more bullish on that. They provided two numbers, and the two numbers in aggregate are $630,000 and change more than what I had in the estimate. To take that out of accounting terms, it means another $630,000 for general fund revenue. That is new news in the last 36 hours. So this, again, as I said, This was not in the information that was distributed on Friday because we didn't know it, but did want to make everybody aware of it because it certainly impacts any decision-making that's done tonight. So having said that, as a setup, one of the things that have been discussed before is what does it take to get everybody to at least a $30,000 wage income? And did analysis employee by employee. The budget models are set up to do the budgeting at that level. And the quick answer is that there are on board within the general fund right now, there are 9 employees who make less than $30,000 a year. To bring them up to speed will be $65,000 and change. There are 2 vacant positions that are also currently budgeted for less than $30,000 a year. That's another $2,300. Long story short, to get these 11 positions up to a $30,000 a year minimum wage would take a amendment, or not amendment, a adjustment to the proposed budget of $68,000. The counterpart to that is the enterprise fund, and that would be another $11,000. The key number for our purpose tonight, because we're really focused on the general fund, is the $68,000 and change number. We had put together certain options as a result of the direction that was provided, I think, a week and a half ago. The only purpose of showing this page is this is what is in the budget at the moment. If there are going to be any significant changes to the parks plan, it's not going to come from savings in this budget because it's a pretty small budget. What we had come up with as recommendations, and I'm just going to run by them very quickly till we get back about 4 or 5 pages later, and then we'll come back to this. But the initial thinking when we did our work a week ago Monday was we felt very important that before any major investments were made in the parks, that there really needed to be a master plan developed so that it took full advantage of all the capabilities that the parks had and made sure that we invested the money in as smart a way as possible. So that was one recommendation. We also looked at several others. We've itemized 5 here. We had more, but this was before we knew about the extra $630,000. So these were what we had put together, and this is what was reflected in the package that was distributed this past weekend. I will get into more detail, but you can see in total, you're talking probably about $250,000 to $300,000. Again, these are the recommendations the staff came up with. It by no means is what it has to be. Another subject that was first announced last Tuesday night, I think it was Wednesday night or Thursday night, was that there was a need to identify all of the city's assets, ensure we had a fair market value. And the reason for doing that is without that information, the city was not going to be able to get a clean audit. The amount that was mentioned at that time was $50,000 to $100,000. That amount has not been further refined at this point. So I've listed as a not to exceed $100,000. This is another program that we only became aware of. A need to adjust what was in the proposed budget. It relates to an RFP that went out, had to do with getting services for public information and marketing services. You have not seen the recommendation yet. It will come back. The recommended number for that services is going to be $65,000. Those contracts will have the provision in there for additional reimbursable expenses, made an estimate of $30,000. The budget that is in the proposed budget that was looked at earlier this month is $50,000. So one of the things that is going to be put in front of you tonight is the recommendation to increase that by $45,000 to cover what was going to be recommended as a result of the RFP, plus making provision for reimbursable expenses. So when you take all of that and put it together, at this point, we are talking about a potential for $984,000 and change of funding. It includes $75,000 from the CRA. That has not yet been approved, and I'll refer to that in a little further on. But for the moment, including that, you're looking at $984,000 of additional funding. You're looking at compensation plan adjustment related to the general fund of $68,000 and change. We just mentioned the asset identification project a few moments ago for $100,000. A proposed increase to the public information marketing program of $45,000. Again, a park master plan is a staff recommendation. That is certainly more than subject to discussion. And after you include those 4 items, it leaves another $621,000 and change for other park projects, other needs that the commission may identify, and contingency. And if I may just editorialize for a moment, I would please don't look at suddenly you've got an additional $630,000 to spend, because that is a state recommendation. It's a somewhat bullish recommendation. And at this point, I would be somewhat cautious in any decisions you arrive at tonight in terms of how that might be spent. Made reference previously to a set of proposed reductions that the staff had come up with, again, before we knew about the additional $630,000. I can take you through this. I think for the most part, it's self-explanatory. In the budget for next year for police new vehicles is going to be the $100,000 that for the 10 vehicles they'll probably get in the October-November timeframe. There was also a second segment of 10 more additional in the latter part of the year for another $32,000. I should point out everything on this list is something new and different than the city has done this year. So it's not a question of why didn't we come up with these funds this year. These are additional things that staff have proposed for next year that represents an enhancement to the way we did business this year. Get into the small change, $3,300 to reduce the new computers requested by PW admin. Finance had a position listed as an executive assistant, executive administrative assistant. I've recommended backing that out for the moment. Deferred software they were looking for, $8,000 of it had to do with CAFR software, $12,000 had yet to be defined. And I think the rest is reasonably self-explanatory. The HR training, building license, fewer cases going to the unsafe structure board. Parks had a serious proposal in there, all of which were new. They have been recommended for withdrawal. There had been in the original proposal a new recreation leader position as of the first of the year. Recommending that be deferred for 6 months to bring it in line to when the Ingram Park is anticipated to come back on board. Mothballing pool is a strange looking thing, but right now you're paying about $1,000 a month for a pool that's not being used. You can reduce the water level in it, put it into a hibernation mode, and then when it comes time to use the pool again next summer, reactivate it and save $10,000 in the process. Now no cancellation of $20,000 related to football programs. Building maintenance, a small piece of capital. Illegal dumping, as discussed before. Staff had proposed bringing the equivalent of 1 full-time FTE on board that would be involved in patrolling the city-states 20 hours a month to pick up all illegal dumping. Again, that was on the list. That was new, not being done this year, and it was on the list of recommended reductions. The project's descriptions, I'll take you through them very briefly. These relate to the 5 projects that were listed about 5 screens back, I guess. To upgrade the maintenance of the park grounds, it's felt it was going to take 2 full-time maintenance workers, a small amount of ancillary equipment, and probably $30,000 to $35,000 of supplies such as fertilizer, weed killers, etc. The 6 for the senior center, which is one of the ones on the list, $30,000, and this is the list of particulars that would be done within that $30,000. Again, these numbers are estimated at these times. If these are things the commission would like to go forward with, they're going to have to refine for the September meeting. The Boone Park, $65,000 for the various items indicated. Theater and Park Athletic Center, 20,000 for the 6 items listed there. And then the Shabandi Community Center, paint exterior and installed parking lot, the northwest side of the facility, another $60,000. So that was a real quick spin through options that are available to the commission at this point. We need guidance is requested in terms of what the commission would like to bring in, what would like to stay out, or would not be recognized at this time, and then move forward and amend the budget accordingly, depending on decisions that are made tonight. If I can, I'm going to back up a couple screens because I think this is where the first level of decision needs to be made. Let me point out very quickly in regard to the CRA contribution to Parks and Master Plan. There, I will take you through a couple pages a little bit further on. There is an updated proposal to the CRA plan for FY21. Has not been approved by the CRA board. The $75,000 is in the proposed update. It's not in the original one. The recommendation is, since the CRA board has not approved the updated one, that the city submit the original one to the state. That would mean that the $75,000 that's in the proposed update would not be available and would be taken out of this analysis. Is it, I don't know if I'm going too quickly. Is that, have I lost people? If I have, let me try and make good on that.
Thank you, Mr. Anathan, for your presentation. Right now, to my colleagues, I think that this slide and the next slide, Mr. Anathan, could you move to the next slide? And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. This is the decision that we have to make is between these 2 slides. If you go back again. So I'm hearing that as of this past few days, there's that addition of 630,000. What we were here to debate about was that 279,000 and what was cut from that. And whether or not we would like to see adjustments to the budget for the first, well, for the items on the second half, from compensation plan all the way to other parts and projected. So first, let's see how we want to do this. Let me just open up the floor for everyone's thoughts on this, and then we'll go from there in terms of honing in on a decision. So the floor is open.
Mr. Mayor. Vice Mayor can go.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we kind of touched on a bunch of points, but I just wanted to kind of highlight one thing. I know Commissioner Kelly has kind of led the discussion on as far as the parks master plan, and I know staff ultimately came up with I guess with a budgeted item to present for us tonight. But if Commissioner Kelly could, I guess, just kind of weigh in. I mean, I'm, kind of up in the air. I see that the line item is over 6 figures. That's a significant amount. So I'd just like to hear, his opinion on that, as well as the rest of the board, given that it's been presented tonight. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you. I'm looking at, like you, Vice Mayor, kind of perplexed. This increased amount of money and projection of projects. I mean, almost it seems we don't have to do a whole lot. We've already got money and projects been planned. Kind of interesting, including a master plan at some point. Let me go back and ask a couple of questions before I get even to that. Mr. Mayor, to the manager or the budget administrator, we were here to discuss the 270 whatever, because we thought we had to, making a decision on that. Now you're basically saying that the state, based on their projections, you're going to have additional revenue of $630 whatever $1,000, correct?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay. We talked about, I know we talked about the compensation, the financial consultant brought up about the asset. And we kind of realized we need to get that done. The pieces that are really new to me is the public information piece, which is, I guess, a separate item you said that'll come up. If you got this additional $630,000 that you're projecting, why would you need to cut anything?
There's no need to. As you were made aware of the 279,000, we brought it back. That's certainly up to your call as to whether you want to accept any of it or some of it. But the work was done. It was part of the information that was distributed on Friday, and didn't just want to make it go away. So it's there for your consideration and decision making.
Okay, so based on what you're saying, then there's no need to do any cutting.
That certainly is one option. I mean, a
Mr.
couple items in there by definition are going to occur. Football's been canceled, and it certainly makes no sense to bring on a new recreation leader 6 months early if the park's not going to be open. So that's a small portion of the 279, but you probably want to retain those just because they've already occurred for all practical purposes.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sir.
I will tell you, staff worked very, very hard on this matter. The projected money came in a couple of days ago from the state, notifying us of additional revenue. I don't believe any cuts should be made. I believe the budget should be pushed through as done with the projected additions without cuts. We could always come back and do a budget amendment if cuts that need to be made. We have to true up this current budget by October, and then we can do, as we have been doing, a budget amendment will be probably presented in October, November, December timeframe. So my opinion is no cuts. We have the additional revenue. Let's evaluate things in the first 3 months of the new FY. And if we need to make adjustments, we make adjustments there. But with the additional revenue, I don't think any cuts should be made. I think the budget should be pushed through, let the state provide input, and go from there. The state's input, we may have to make adjustments anyway. But with the additional revenue, I don't think any cuts need to be made.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, I still have the floor?
Yes, sir.
So what you're saying is just push through all of these compensation, asset identification, public information, master plan, and other park projects.
Yes, sir.
Well, if it's Bob again, if I may, what I'm hearing, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know what's going on.
Bob, please make sure you recognize before speaking. Commissioner Kelly has the floor. The manager answered his question, so Commissioner Kelly still has the floor.
I apologize.
Okay, so Mr. Manager, you're saying push them all through, including the projects, and making adjustments after without any type of cuts to any of the things that he mentioned earlier in terms of potential adjustments, whether it's police, administration. You're saying keep all of those?
Yes, sir. So the first area we want.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir.
Your mic is having issues.
Okay, I'm back on.
All right. So Commissioner Kelly, can I say a few things first?
Oh, go right ahead. He's got to log back on anyway. Go ahead.
All right. So I am, Bob, could you go to the next screen? So when I saw these, Commissioner Kelly, I was probably with you and the the manager, in regards to what to cut. Not cutting anything. Parks and Rec was probably the only one, because I'm looking at the football and the park leaders. I think those two are definitely, but outside of that, I'm in that agreement. However, Bob, you go to the next screen.
This one?
Back
No.
to the screen, Bob.
Up.
I do think it's very important that we do allocate as much funding to our contingency as possible, and have that as we thinking. So there's just my 2 cents while the manager get on. All right, manager, you still have the floor. Oh, well, Kelly, Commissioner Kelly, you have the floor. I think you was answering a question for the manager.
Well, that's part of what I was getting to, because it's just slash. It doesn't break down what that contingency is about, because it doesn't break it down. It just got it all lumped together. But my point originally was we can keep all of these, not cut anything, and potentially outside, like you said, football or whatever, the moth in the pool, that's probably going to be closed. I understand those two, and everything else you keep. But how much of the 620 whatever would be contingency? It's not. I mean, unless I'm missing, it's not broken down. How much of that would be considered contingency? Because one of the things I'm concerned about is setting the state a budget where we're spending, but not really showing any initiative to put some stuff in contingency and/or reserves, and to build up reserves. I guess that's to the manager or the budget administrator.
If I may, Commissioner, the 621-792, which is what you're referring to, did not make any recommendations because that's was available to the commission to make decisions as to where they wanted to spend that money. It is an unassigned pot of money at the moment. If you want to identify other park projects tonight by chance, that would take down the 621 by whatever projects you identify. If you put it all in contingency, then the whole 621-792 would be contingency. That number is going to change because what I'm hearing is that funding at the top half is going to change. The 630, if I can take you to the top of that page again, the 630,000 and change is going to stay the same. The mayor has proposed the 279,761. It's going to go down to 38,000. The CRA contribution to the Parks Master Plan is going to go away for the moment because that's not approved. So if the mayor's recommendation is adopted for 38,000, where you see the 279,000, the funding is going to change to $668,000 and change. That's $668,000 in funding. I'm talking about this number right here. This number will change, go down to 38,000. This will go away. This number will become 668,000. This 668,000 can be allocated over one or more of these projects, or it can be all put into contingency. So this is really intended for the commission to provide some sense of how they would like to treat their resources in terms of what the state sees at this point, and in terms of what they have available to them for the first budget hearing in September.
Okay, the day's Tuesday. Maybe I'm better on budgets on Wednesday, because you just kind of lost me halfway through this discussion. I'm trying to follow you. Okay. Okay, so if we take no cuts, like the manager is suggesting, we don't cut anything from any departments,
Right.
except for, you mentioned, I guess, about 30,000 or something, and we keep all the rest of the program, I mean, all the other initiatives. I'm talking about that 270 something figure. Because that's what we were talking about last meeting. Is that correct, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Again, if you decide to keep the compensation plan adjustment, if you decide to approve at this point the asset identification project, and if you decide to approve at this point the additional budget for the public information marketing program, and I'm not sure where we are on the park master plan, that may be in, may be out, but assuming for the moment just the first three, the 68, the 100, and the 45,000 right here. In total, you're talking about you're talking about 213,000 over these three projects. If we go back up here and the mayor's recommendation is accepted for 38,000 instead of 279, this goes away. This number becomes 668,000. From that, if you
Okay, stop right there, stop right there, stop right. Please, hate Mr. Mayor, but he's starting to confuse me again. All right, so when you say the mayor's,
You're right on, Commissioner Kelly. Keep going. You're good.
when you say the mayor's 270 down to 30, but I thought I just heard the manager say we weren't gonna do any, well, he wasn't proposing any touches out of that at all. I think the mayor was Mr. Mayor, and I'm not gonna speak for you. You wanted to get it down to 30? Is that what he's saying? I'm confused with what he's.
Bob, could you go to the next, Mr. Anthony, could you go to the next page?
it's
So
listed-
what I proposed was this defer the new recreation leader hire and the football cancellation of football program. So those two cuts would stay, which means that yeah, those two cuts would not stay, go away, I think.
Okay, well, but according to the manager, he's saying keep everything in this. That's why I'm getting confused, because he's saying don't touch anything in these potential cuts. Let them all stay there. I guess they can hire as they need. I'm challenged with the, if you want to, I understand football in a sense, because we're not going to do football at all. But the manager said just keep it all in there and make adjustments as needed. Is that what you said, Mr. Manager? I thought that's what I heard him say. But that before he got muted, I mean, before he, what Mr. Manager, what you indicated?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is we're making a lot of movement, a lot of changes at this point. We received an additional $600,000. Okay, that covers the additional expenses, so no cuts have to be made. At this point, we need, I think no cuts need to be made. We need to have the monies available for projects. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think all these projects and parks are going to be able to be done in the next FY. We're projecting them to be done. We got to go through an RFP process. We got to go through an RFP process and various other things with some of these projects. We want the money available there. And like I said, we have the opportunity to do budget amendments going forward. So we can't do the projects, we can reallocate the money to somewhere else. At this point, I say, let's present this budget to the state. Let's see what input they provide us and what changes need to be made, if any need to be made, based on my conversations with the state because of the additional revenue, and kind of move forward. The only cuts I would probably propose are park cuts in regards to the recreational leader, football, various programs that we're not going to have. Other than that, I don't think any drastic changes are going to be made. As far as the park master plan, that's something the CRA needs to discuss and decide. CRA budget is not approved, so we're sending this up without the CRA budget approved. My opinion is take it out until the CRA budget is approved, because we're projecting a number that hasn't been approved by another open body, by another body that has authorization for the budget. We can potentially keep it in there and explain to the state, this is tentative, potentially until the CRA pass the budget. But my opinion is until the CRA passes their budget, we should use the preliminary numbers that are put in there and let the CRA discuss this park master plan.
Okay, well, let me just say this. Having said that, Mr. Mayor, to my colleagues, I'm of the opinion that we could leave the things in there, because I kind of agree with the manager in a sense. A lot of these things are not going to get done. I think we can do our contribution towards a park master plan, because we're going to need to do that. CRA can come back with theirs, and that'll get us to 150. We can do ours, whatever we want to do. And as part of the park summit, since we have an idea what dollars are kind of set aside, that will help us in I believe, in our discussions. The only thing that I really want to hope we do is to, as a part of this, put some money in contingencies. That's the only thing, whatever the amount is that's comfortable or doesn't hurt us, since we now know, I mean, I was really leading towards wanting to do 1%, 2% cost of living for every employee with that money, just use it all. Because I think that some of them, not some of them, our employees have been working hard without any kind of raises. And I know we're raising the compensation for the lower ones, but I think if we had this revenue, but I don't want to complicate things by asking if we gave everybody, 2% cost of living, whatever it costs, that would just complicate something. But I would say going forward, if it presents itself in a budget amendment, and resources continue to come in, that we look at that. So I would say pass it the way it is. But Mr. Mayor, I don't know if I got my question answered in terms of what that contingency amount is. But I think we ought to send it up to the state saying we got these extra dollars, but we are going to put some dollars directly into contingency because we recognize we need to be, discipline our spending. Whatever that number is, because you got so many different things up here, I think that's what we ought to do. That's just my take on it. I think we can still work with all the things that he's listed for park improvements. Like you said, that's a process anyway. So that'll just help us in our discussion, our planning. When we talk about the park summit, we want to see, at least we know we got some stuff allocated in terms of towards that. So that's the only question I really have, Mr. Mayor, what that number would be for contingency, what that dollar amount, because I think we ought to show the state that we are trying to be disciplined in saving money. Just because we got 600,000 come in, we ain't just trying to spend it all. We want to do what we can to put some in contingency and reserves. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Anthony, could you please get the total number of how much funding we will be putting in contingency from the next year's budget? I know that this line item of 621, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be in contingency if we move with this, but I know there's another number that we had already there. I think it was around 600 too, if I'm not mistaken.
Mayor, if I may, a couple things. I need your help. I need the commission's help on the following. The top number at the moment for potential funding shows 984,000. I think I heard that by definition, the 75,000 has to go away. I think the 279,000 has now been reduced to 38,000. That says the funding in the top line right here, which was 984, is now going to be 668,000. I need commission guidance on where you want the 668,000 spread, because down here we have 984. I mean, you can decide to show some here. You can decide to show some here in the asset identification project. You can accept the 45,000 here. If you accept these three, the 68,000, the 100,000, and the 45,000, just for as an example, that number, and don't accept the park master plan for a moment. The 668,000 you have here, you would reduce by these expenditures that you're hypothetically accepting at this point, 213.
Mr. Anthony, could you hold for a moment? Because I think you're confusing. I know you're confusing me. Let me try and make this a little clearer. Does anyone want to remove the compensation plan? Does anyone want to remove the asset identification project? Does anyone want to remove the public information and marketing program adjusted?
That's another item.
No, the public information marketing. Do you want to remove that?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
I don't know if I want to remove it because that's a different item with other information. So I don't think you can remove it at this moment. Not necessarily saying you agree with it, but we don't have all the information on that item. I know they're putting it forward because of the budget. So I think you got to let it stay there until we discuss it one way or the other. I don't think you can take it out.
So, and Mr. Manager, correct me if I'm wrong. Basically what they propose is that due to the RFP they just released, there was already $50,000 in the budget to pay for a consultant. Mm-hmm. However, there was an additional amount of money that was needed was reimbursable. So for example, when the consultant goes after and get either media ads, if they go out and got the truck that we had for the mask campaign, that will come out of that additional funding that they want us to put in here at the moment. Am I correct in that, Mr. Manager?
You're somewhat correct.
Please make any corrections on the
Okay, so we budgeted 50,000. When we put out the RFP was put out for a range of 50 to 65,000. RFP came back at 65,000. Okay, we budgeted 50,000. So we're adding an additional 15 for professional services only. Okay, and then the rest of the money is going to reimbursables, as you said, the marketing truck, any flyers that are done, those are reimbursable items. So basically what we do is how we work it, which is a good way to do it. We allow the marketing person to go out and get these things and use their money, use their funds to get the marketing truck, get this stuff, and then we reimburse them. So this goes through an approval process, Mayor. So she just doesn't go out and do it. It comes through me. I look at it. Most of the initiatives the commission is involved in, the different projects. So the commission is involved in what's going on, what's going to happen, what's going to be used, etc. So based on that guidance, I do approvals in regards to, for example, the mask covers. And Commissioner Kelly, I promise I dropped off the mask covers this afternoon, so you're going to get one. But the mask covers, you know, the items like that, those are reimbursable items. That's why we're adding additional money. So 15,000 of the 45 goes to professional services, and the rest of it is potential reimbursables. And we may not necessarily hit 30,000, but we just want to project that just because of all the stuff we're doing to pump the city up at this point, it may get to that number, it may not. I may control it and keep it at 15,000. It may be 30,000. It may be less.
So basically, at the end of the day, they want to make sure that they have all the funds for PR.
That's
what
correct.
that $45,000 additional funds is.
That's correct.
So, does anyone want to remove that or have issues with that one? All right. So for the park master plan, does anyone want to remove that funding?
Yeah,
Right.
I don't want, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kelly.
That 150 is based on the city putting up 75 and CRA putting up 75.
Yes.
So for our purposes, the way I'm listening to the manager, we will be putting up 75 in this budget instead of 150.
Mr. Manager.
Robert?
If I may, this says the city is proposing to spend 150,000 and it hopes that the CRA is going to contribute 75 to it. We believe the master plan study is going to cost 150,000. If the commission believes there should be a master plan, we've got to show 150,000 at this point. At such time that the CRA gets their budget adopted, we may get a contribution to this payment. But for the moment, this says it's $150,000 park master plan to be funded by the city.
So basically meaning that we are budgeting the funds. If the CRA comes with the additional 75,000, we may be able to reallocate that within the parks plan to other projects that was laid out or that may be coming up in the development of this parks plan and also the park summit. Is that correct, Mr. Anderson?
Yes, sir. And it's not even limited. The 75,000 can go anywhere in the general fund you want to spend it.
Got it. Thank you very much. So with that information, does anyone want to remove that 150 and make edits to that?
Mr. Mayor, I don't really want to remove it. I mean, I think it's kind of on the high end, but given that we could, reallocate it at a later date, I guess is okay. To submit as is, and then also considering the $621,000 contingency. Because I mean, we do have money left over that we still are looking to allocate and potentially fill in gaps, I guess, in other projects or reserves or whatever the will of the commission is. But ultimately, I mean, we got that on the back end. I don't see a problem in at least putting it up front pending approval from the the CRA board.
Got it. Anyone
Mayor?
else want to make edits to the park plan? All right, so Mr.
Mayor,
Oh,
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
hold on, Mr. Anderson. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Since we were talking about the contingency, I know Commissioner Kelly brought up a point about, I guess, not defining our line items and just kind of listing as other contingency. I know in the past, when we submitted budgets, those are line items for other contractor services, or I can't remember what the specific line item, maybe finance can help me, but those line items were placed in our reserves. So I guess, you know, like to kind of prevent that from happening in this upcoming budget when it's presented, what's the official recommendation, I guess, from staff as far as how to, I mean, I see that they presented it, you know, kind of left it open-ended, but just to kind of, you know, kind of pick up on commissioner's concerns, you know, should we define it? You know, should we figure out what that contingency is, or should we submit it as is, or, you know, and then at a later date decide how we're going to spread it out across whatever line items are put forth for parks and recreation.
So now that we know that the first 4 items we do not want to make any adjustments to, what I was going to suggest is that the remaining funding goes to reserves contingency, whichever, I don't know if those are complete 2 different budgets or line items, but what I'm thinking is that we put the funding away for safekeeping. If the Parks Summit or Parks Plan come out with other things based upon the status of the city, we can reevaluate at that time whether or not we want to utilize that contingency for whatever comes out. That's the level of thinking I'm thinking. Does anyone have a issue with that proposal?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Kelly?
I don't have an issue with it. I just would like to know what that amount is. If we just know what it is. I mean,
I got you.
you can't tell us what that amount is?
So,
Got you.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Hold on. Okay. So now, Mr. Manager Bob, now that you know what we want to do, we want to keep those 4 items. And we want to put the rest into contingency. Could you tell us what that amount is total? And also how would it be coded in the budget?
Yes, sir. If I may, the 621,000 will go down to 305,000. It will show up as contingency right now in your general fund. You have a little over 1.4 million. This will raise it to 1.7 million.
So as a city, we will now have 1.7 million that we're budgeting for in next year's budget for contingency and reserve. Is that correct, Madam? If we move with what we just laid out. Okay.
If that's to me, the answer is yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Manager, Commissioner Kelly, y'all have any other thoughts, comments on that?
I'm with you on the conversation, all the bottom parts. I'm going back up to the things that were projected to be taken from departments. Well, that is no longer on the table. That funding is back in those budgets. I heard the manager say, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Manager, since this is always a work in progress, I know the departments put in for some other stuff that they felt was really needed, that you did not recommend, whether it was equipment, staffing, et cetera, in some departments. I would like for you to look at that going forward and come back potentially with any budget amendments after we get this passed. I don't want to muddy the waters with this, but I know that some of the departments did submit some other things they felt really would be helpful or needed in their departments. And although you can't fund them all, since looks like you're going to have a little wiggle room, I'll say it like that, to go back and look after we pass this and you go forward with the first budget amendment, to look at any of those that you could bring forward that could be beneficial or you believe could be beneficial going forward for our community. That's just something I'd like to just put on the table. But other than that, looks like I have no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Manager.
Commissioner Kelly, first, thank you for your comments and for your input in regards to the budget. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Budget Amendment 1, potentially Budget Amendment 1 or Budget Amendment 2, we would look at these projects, what's realistically going to happen, what's not going to realistically happen early on in the first or second quarter of the budget, and make those appropriate adjustments. I'm even open to a 1 to 2% raise for staff if we kind of evaluate the budget at probably quarter 2 of the FY to look at expenditures and see if these large projects are going to happen and do a calculation of what a 1 or 2% cost of living increase would look like for all employees. Because I'll be honest with you, we're going to get a little, employees are going to get a little indigestion or a little bothered in regards to a group of employees getting raised to 30,000 and everybody else not getting anything. So as a city manager, I'm putting it out there that I'm going to have to deal with that with the employees. So I'm going to end up having an all employee staff meeting. It's probably sometime this next month to kind of explain the budget and what our methodology is, and even potentially a 1 or 2% raise in quarter 2, because you're going to get employees that say, well, you moved people to 30,000. What about everybody else?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager, Commissioner Kelly.
That's why I was trying to take interjection, because that's exactly what you're going to get. And I know I probably will not be here by the time you get to that second amendment or whatever. And that's why I'm proposing it, because by then you will have a better picture. But I think that you will be able to do hopefully something 1 or 2% for all employees, because if I was someone making whatever I'm making, it would seem unfair that I'm not getting anything just because I've been here. I happen to make a certain amount, but I do understand why we're trying to bring people up to a certain level. And that's why I propose you make sure you look at it, or suggest you look at it and your first or second, because it will be some indigestion, but maybe it'll be a little smoother knowing that the commission is not lost in the fact of trying to do that, whether it's salary, cost of living, and like you say, any equipment or whatever. But thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on this page?
Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarity for Mr. Anathan, through the manager to Mr. Anathan. For the contingency item, the leftover funds, those are unrestricted funds that are going back to the general fund, what you like to call, Mr. Anathan, the rainy day fund, that contingency?
You've got your reserves, which is kind of your checking account, bank account. This is a line in the budget for next year, which is protection against storms, revenue shortfalls, expenditure increase, and so forth. If none of it gets spent at the end of next year, it will all fall into the reserves. But they're two slightly different concepts. I don't know if that helped or just confused.
The latter, but it's fine.
If I may, you put into a budget normally a number that says, I don't know how this is going to be spent, but something awful could happen and I need to have some protection there. That's unrelated to going into the year for the general fund reserve. At the moment, we're saying maybe negative 700,000. Those are two different things. If you don't spend the contingency, that means that becomes an adder to your reserves at the end of the year. It's just like any other expense. If you don't spend it, it goes into your reserve account.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on this item, this page? All right, Mr. Anthony, could you go to the next page?
This one, Mayor, what I was going to cover next.
All right. So what I wanted to propose is that we do cancel our football programs for next year. Um, just to be on a very safe side. I'm looking at the data for COVID and what's going on. We're going to be in this for a while, and I don't want to give anybody any false hopes that we as a city are going to try out the football program during the era of COVID at the beginning. I would much rather us as a city take the stance that we understand and we want to protect our kids, just bottom line. So the cancellation of football program, I suggest that we pull that out. So just make that clear. And then the 18,000 for a rec leader, I don't see why we would hire a new person in parks when majority of our programs are going to be shut down. So I don't see why that would be in there. And then the last piece, Mr. Manager, what is mothball pool?
Mothball pool, monthly maintenance for 10 months. I have Mr. Brown explain that. I think that's pool maintenance to maintain the pool. Mr. Brown, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Currently, we have a monthly service in the pool, our pool department. And what we wanted to do, we wanted to defer that. And we can use that money and other needs in the department. We can lower the level of the pool, put a cover on it, let it sit for the summer again for about 6 or 7 months, and then we can go back to our normal activities during the summer with the pool. Because we have no monies right now to hire a lifeguard. So we can save we spend about close to $950 a month. So we can save a significant amount of money with the pool being shut down, water lowered, and eliminate the maintenance, monthly maintenance.
All right. Now with the pool, and this is the pool at Shabani Park.
Yes.
It's called mothball?
No, that's the termination for. You explain it, Bob. That's your slogan.
Yes, sir. I apologize. That's a Navy term. You mothball a ship, you put it into storage. My bad.
Oh, okay. I was completely confused. I'm sorry. It threw me off, y'all.
Bob is here.
If Commissioner Burke is there, he'll back me up.
We'll see. All right. Now, my concern is I know that in the past, we have laxed on the maintenance of our pool and it looked nasty. And I definitely do not want that happening in any way, shape, or form. And what you're proposing, will it make sure that that does not happen? Because I would much rather have the pool maintenance than for it to look not in the best condition.
What we normally do in a situation like that, Mayor, is we let out 3/4 of the water that's in the pool. So you got a low amount of water just basically at the bottom of the pool, and then you put a cover over it. So there's no really algae or anything of that nature. The water that's in the bottom of the pool is to keep from the concrete cracking. So it's not going to be a significant amount of water in the pool at all. So the maintenance.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the maintenance of the algae and things of that nature most likely that won't occur because it's not a significant amount of water in the pool.
And if it does occur?
I guess then we can always call in and have something done as opposed to having them to come out just to put chlorine in it. It's not being used and inactive. So, we can always monitor it. If we need it, then we can always call out for the service. So we still can save a lot of money doing that.
So does that mean we can do that with other funds in the park, or you're talking about just reducing this maintenance a little more? Like,
well, I'm just saying reducing it, and it gives the city more money to I guess to put in other areas in the city, mainly in the Parks and Recreation Department. But it's just to enhance the budget in the Parks Department for the uses that we can use for the capital improvement.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Manager.
My guidance is to leave it alone.
Okay.
Leave it. Let's leave it. Remove the football Let's defer the new recreational leader. Let's keep the mothball pool just in case. It's a very small amount of money that can be adjusted. So it's not a deal breaker. I say keep it.
All right. Does anyone have any thoughts on that suggestion?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
yeah, I was gonna tell you, leave the pool alone because it takes forever to get that thing cranked back up when you shut it down.
Exactly.
I know Mr. Brown talking about, but you had headaches trying to get that thing going back up. I'd rather see it just continue with the maintenance and, whatever, because I mean, you're saying next summer, but we're in Florida. Things were to change, you might, we were already talking about opening up our pool more than just the summer months. I don't have a problem with the cancellation of the football program, but I do have a challenge with deferral of the rec leader, only because I would hope that Parks is looking at some new innovative programming, which might require a different skill set. And since it's much challenging to even hire people with the slowness of interviews, that it might take them a little while to even bring somebody on board that can enhance recreational programming, not that we do now, but even virtual or what have you. So I would not really want to defer. And I think the managers indicated we really don't need to defer any of them, but I could agree with football because we're just not going to have it. That's a given. But I don't know why we would defer the rec leader, because if it's not, I think it's going to take them time to hire anybody anyway. So I would not want to take that out of the budget. Just leave it in there. And it has to go through a process of hiring anyway. And it's not a hit, because the more we keep cutting, then the more money you're saying you got available, you're going to put wherever else. I think that could be send a different message to other employees and departments as well. That's just my thinking. I'll be in favor of the cancellation of the football funding, but I would leave the rec leader and the mothball pool in place along with all the other items. That's my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor
Mr. Mayor.
Pratt?
Any other thoughts? Commissioner Bass?
Yes, thank you so much. I totally agree. This discussion, it's really awesome. I must say that. I'm quiet, but the questions that I'm writing to ask, somebody's asking it or referring to it. So I thank God for wisdom on this panel. I call it a panel. That's okay. Yeah, but the mop ball, I totally agree, because that was my concern about what's gonna take to bring the pool back up. And the recreational leader, I feel the same way. It's gonna take time to get someone to fill that position, and hopefully it won't take too long so we can start doing some kind of Zoom exercising or something, food and nutrition via Zoom, because we don't know how long we would have to operate in the manner that we are now. So thank you.
For a moment of clarity, if we're talking about innovative programs, will we hire somebody for innovative program like yoga and nutrition, or will that be actual consultant that would do it, for like a few consultants that would do that?
My thought.
Mr. Manager, yeah, question for you, Mr. Manager.
Yes, so my thought process is, and I've talked to various staff members, including Mr. Brown. My thought process is the RFP, do a RFP for numerous programs that we kind of come up with. We're going to have the Park Summit. So we're going to have a better understanding of what type of programs the city desires to have. And I think an RFP needs to be put out to solicit individuals to come in and pay the city, number one, to use our facility, and get a portion of registration fees for specific classes to be done in our facilities. That's how I look at it.
So yeah, that's what my point about this recreation leader, because the more we in COVID-19, majority of people are talking about furloughing and cutting staff. We're talking about giving raises and hiring more. And that's kind of throwing me off. So with this, right now, with this one, instead of hiring, why not just put that in some type of reserve, because I really, the expectation to hire somebody, especially during this COVID-19 time, how would that person even manage all the things we want to do? And I know when the park summit come up, I'm pretty sure that there are going to be a variety of things people want. And it's limited on hiring one person to do those variety of things. Like I'm still confused about that. However, we can continue to put money to the side that when this park summit comes up, the master plan gets put in the way, we get clarity on our revenues due to COVID, we can pull that money out based upon the situation and apply to whatever we want to see. So that's why I'm touching on this rec leader, because I don't want that money to be held up to hire somebody and we don't even know what that person's going to be hired to do. And our parks programs are shut down right now. So,
if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager.
My thought process on the recreational leader, and again, I had this conversation with Mr. Brown, and I thank him, for his open-mindedness, is to bring in a recreational leader that's more of a project manager, that changed the job description a little bit, somebody that's experienced in parks and recreation and programming. So the parks needs a programmer, okay? And maybe we need to change it from recreational leader to programmer. They need a programmer to solicit and manage park programs. That's what our parks need. An individual to come in as a programmer to manage the RFPs, manage the programs within the parks program, within the parks department. That's what it's needed for. I say don't remove it. I think, there's various thought processes in regards to parks. I know there's a thought process to outsource park programs. There's a thought process to hire employees to actually do the programming. I'm meeting in the middle. I say bring in a programmer that works for the city to manage the programs within the parks department. So if you want to change it from recreational leader to programmer, we can do that. But I say leave the money for a potential hire of somebody with a high skill set, maybe on a part-time basis, to deal with park programming.
Question for the manager or Mr. Brown. Could you just quickly run down all the positions in parks? Like, I know there's a director, assistant director. Could you break that down to me?
Mr. Brown?
We have a director, assistant director, we have a park superintendent, and we have 2-3 recreational leaders.
Okay.
And 1 administrator.
All right. And out of all those people, including the director and assistant director and supervisor, no one can coordinate programs?
We can. You got to understand what I just gave you was a number about 6 employees with 3 facilities. So when you're talking about 3 facilities, there are drivers, there are after-school pickup drivers. We're all over the place. From 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, we got 2 employees that constantly picking up kids. So now you don't have that person in the facility to interact with kids because they're picking up kids. And then we only have 1 person in facilities, and then you got to have your outside activities. So we thought about a programmer with the assistance of volunteers to make it happen, because we got a lot of hats and we do maintenance as well. So it's very hard to structure a park department with 3 facilities and 6 employees. It's just, it's a tough task.
All right. So with that insight, I appreciate that. I'm more concerned. I still would want to remove it. That's just me personally. With the intent in mind that I know we're doing a parks master plan, and that parks master plan will lay out most likely what will be our programming, how to utilize our facility, and also the staffing that we need in order to do that. So before we have that plan, matter of fact, before we have the plan, before we have the input from the Park Summit, I am hesitant to make any new additions or new programming without those two things guiding our park budgets and what we're going to do. So that's my opinion. I heard a few others. I think the last, is either Vice Mayor Commissioner Burke, and if Commissioner Bass and Commissioner Kelly have any difference, but I want to hear from Vice Mayor Davis and Commissioner Burke, and we'll wrap this up.
Mr. Mayor?
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I kind of saw the new recreational leader position, but if I could just ask a few questions before I get started. The line item, the 18,000 line item, is that based on a biannual salary basis? Like, is that half a year amount, Mr. Manager?
It'd be a half a year amount. Bob, am I correct?
Yes, sir. It's a fully burdened wages plus benefits.
Okay. So, I mean, from him, the description, the manager's description, it seems to be a more, I guess, development type, development / project management type position within parks. The assumption is, whether we, do RFPs, RFQs, or we partner with a third party to provide parks and recreational programming, or rather we go out, and apply for grants from foundations, because we don't, there's also additional money that we can go after. Like, we're not limited to, I mean, from a budgetary standpoint, we're limited to our funds, but there are always, other funders such as the Children's Trust and various foundations that give to parks and recreation. So I would hope, we also, looking at those options too, with the recreational leader position coming online. I'm kind of along the lines of, Commissioner Kelly and Bass. Like, if the position is going to be focused, in my opinion, on development, and maybe, I don't know if we're looking for grant writers, because I know, oftentimes in various parks and recreation departments, they do have grant writers. I know we kind of discussed it, and I don't think we budgeted for the position in this upcoming fiscal year, but it'd be great if we could bring someone online, maybe that could be included in the description somehow. But someone online to go after grant funds to help us, manage those projects. But I mean, I'm gonna yield to the manager's recommendation. If he say, leave it, and we need, that kind of position, that kind of skill set to fill the immediate need until we figure out, what the future of parks, look like. I know it's ahead of the park summit, but in my opinion, I just think we need to move on it. So with that, I'm done, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Burke, you have anything?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm kind of in the mindset when they say we're looking for somebody with experience in parks and recreation. We're going to get somebody who, if they have the experience in parks and recreation, who knows parks and recreation and who knows where the grant money is, and who knows parks. And I concur with everybody else. As long as we're getting the experience, then I'm sure they could do some of the program and even do some grant writing. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, so we see Mr. Anathan that for this page, we only want to cut out the 20,000. So with
Mayor,
that,
may I comment on that? Because this page directly relates to the prior page. And if you leave that in, then the 305,000 that we talked about on contingency, it's got to be reduced by the $18,000 you've decided to leave in. So that'll change the contingency number from 305,000 to 287,000.
thank you, sir. As I said, if you go back to that page, the parks page, the only change will be the removal of the cancellation of football programs. So whatever you have to do from there, please do. We already said that we want to keep the first 4 items and put everything in contingency. So please make those updates, send out that information. But I think those are what the suggestions we want to make. Do we have to make a formal amendment to those, Madam Attorney or Mr. Manager? Or do these suggestions be put in and we can vote on this item?
We will go off your direction in regards to the budget. It is the city manager's budget. So, I will make based on input, we will make the appropriate adjustments and send it up to the state. And then it'll come back and then you all will do a formal approval of the actual budget. Robert, am I in the right pace?
Yes, sir, right on. But I would remind everybody that you get 2 shots at the budget in September. And if you see a need to make a change then, that option is always available to you.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion on resolution 1?
Mr. Mayor,
Madam Attorney?
if there's a change in the proposed amount from the 44 million, then we would need to proffer an amendment to the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Mr. Manager, Mr. Anathan, is there any change to the 44 million amount?
Yes, sir. The revenue and the expenditure are going to go up by this new revenue, 630,041. So the answer is yes.
All right. So can you detail out those numbers so that we can state an amendment? If you can lay out what those changes would be, and you'll state them, and I will call for a motion with the changes proposed by you, and then we'll vote it up or down and move forward.
Yes, sir. It's going to be at the aggregate level. I don't have the resolution in front of me. If the assistant city attorney can give me the numbers that are in the resolution right now, we'll just add that amount to it.
We can't hear you, Madam Attorney. Would you want me to share this aspect of the?
Yeah, you can. I'm sorry, I just forgot I was on mute.
All right, I will share that.
Mayor, I think I got it right here. No, that's for the other one.
Whereas, or is this the section are you talking about, Madam Attorney? Both of them, I guess. So we're
The
looking.
whereas.
Okay.
And section 2.
All right, Mr. Anathan, I'm waiting on your numbers.
Okay, perfect. See it right here. Thank you very much. And you've taken away my other screen. Bear with me 1 second. I've got to pull up my notes. Okay, almost there. The new numbers will be $45,187,078, an increase of $630,041.
All right, do I have a motion on the floor?
Move it.
Moved by
Second.
Commissioner Kelly, second by who?
Burke.
Commissioner Burke.
Yes.
Madam Clerk, any discussion on this item, on the motion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Mayor Burke,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion on the amendment passes.
All right, do I have any other discussion on this item? All right, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Mayor Pike?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, Madam Attorney, item 6B.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, amending Resolution 20-9781 to allow for a virtual meeting or an in-person at the discretion of the city manager, setting the proposed millage rate of 9.8 mils for computation of ad valorem taxes for the City of Opa-locka, Florida, as provided by law for the budget for fiscal year 2020 through 2021, establishing the date, time, and place for the first hearing to consider the proposed millage rate and proposed budget for FY 2020 through 2021, directing the city manager to forward a copy of the resolution to the Florida Department of Revenue, Property Tax Oversight, Trim Compliance Section, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for an effective date. This is sponsored by the city manager.
All right, do I have a motion on this item?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Burke,
Second.
second by Commissioner Kelly. Mr. Manager, this is your item. Would you introduce it?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is a reintroduced resolution. All we did was change the date of the actual hearing. The previous resolution conflicted with the school board's millage hearing. So of course, as you know, we cannot hold a hearing on the same day as another elected body, like the county or the school board. So we had to change our date to meet the standard. That is it. It is the same, exact same item that was presented in the last commission meeting, just a date change.
All right, do I have any discussion on this item? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mayor, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes, I know normally we would have IE workshop for the community. I know we're in virtual, and I know the manager has in person. I would just offer maybe at least, even though we're setting the dates for the hearings, somewhere before that, maybe one workshop, or offer one workshop for the public virtually or whatever, just so that you know, before you actually get to the hearings.
All right, you done, Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Anathan, I know we did one budget workshop before. Do we have on the schedule to do another one before the final passage of the millage budget?
No, sir, at the moment, there's the only one that's scheduled is the one that already occurred.
All right, so I think Commissioner Kelly is proposing that we do additional one. So with that, can we schedule something after we get the recommendations from the state to do a final review of the budget before we have the confirmation hearings or meetings?
Yes, sir. No problem. We can schedule one. We'll look at dates and proffer those dates to the clerk, to the commission, and figure a date out. No problem.
Mr. Mayor?
All right, Commissioner Kelly?
Not so much for us, although, you know, obviously some changes we gotta know about, but just for the public to have another opportunity to weigh in, if they choose to say that, you know, as you said, trying to be transparent in this setting, in a workshop setting, so they, you know, don't have if they got questions or concerns, we can try to address them or get the answers. That's why I was proposing it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, any other discussion on this item?
Not really any discussion, but I just want to say, you know, thank y'all for extending that, you know, the extra workshop opportunity. You know, we got the park summit coming up, so definitely, you know, if any changes come about and, you know, we get some input that, you know, if the community can't provide at the workshop, you know, at least we could voice, you know, their concerns and have it reflected in this budget. So thank you guys for extending the opportunity to have this additional budget workshop for the community.
All right, any other discussion on this item? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pike.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All All right, we have handled the business for the special commission meeting. As we know, when we call a special commission meeting, the conversation has been limited to the resolutions. So since we have concluded, it is time to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Commissioner Kelly,
Second,
second by Commissioner Burt. Please public note, we do have a meeting on Thursday, a workshop, and I believe a special commission meeting. So any items or anything additional, please feel free to bring it there. We look forward to seeing you. Everyone have a good evening. Take care.